Hello everyone. Tonight we begin with a quiet image. You're lying still in a darkened room. The weight of the day softens. Your body begins to sink just slightly into whatever is holding you. Outside, the world continues its rhythm, night following day waves, meeting shore stars, rising in silence. And within you, another cycle continues. Thought, breath, sensation, thought again. This is where we begin. Not with answers, not with beliefs, but with a rhythm, one that doesn't move forward like a straight line, but loops gently, like breath in the chest, like the phases of the moon. That rhythm has a name in Buddhist teachings, samsara. And tonight, we'll explore what that really means. Not from a place of dogma, but as a soft inquiry, a meditation, a way of listening more deeply to your own experience. So before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're here now, would you let us know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you? Now turn off the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You don't live your life in a straight line. Though we try to measure time in hours and years, you've probably noticed life feels more like a wheel. Patterns repeat. Feelings return. Lessons you thought were over come back to greet you again, but deeper this time. In Buddhist teachings, that wheel is known as samsara, not a place, but a process, a looping current of craving and becoming, of suffering born from clinging, of birth, death, and birth again. And it doesn't only refer to literal rebirth. Samsara also means the way we are reborn, moment to moment, into our habits, our identities, our stories. Every time you reach for distraction instead of staying. Every time you grasp a thought and call it you. Every time a reaction takes over, before awareness arrives, samsara is spinning. But this isn't a condemnation. It's an observation. One offered not to shame you, but to free you. The Buddha didn't say, "You are trapped." He said, "Look closely. This movement, this repetition can be understood. And what is understood can be released." Even now, lying in stillness, you might begin to see that wheel within you. A looping thought, a memory, an expectation about tomorrow. They rise, they pass, and then without noticing, they rise again. Samsara isn't just something that happens after death. It happens when the mind clings, when you forget the breath, when you chase a feeling, when you tighten around identity trying to hold on to what's already changing. And yet it's not hopeless, because the very act of noticing begins to loosen the wheel. When you see clearly, you stop spinning unconsciously. You begin to respond rather than react, and in that pause, freedom is born. Samsara isn't evil. It's simply the result of habit. It's what happens when the heart forgets its own capacity to be still. The Buddha didn't ask you to believe this. He asked you to look gently, curiously at the way things are. Tonight, that's what we'll do. We'll look not through the lens of dogma, but through the soft light of awareness. We'll explore the teachings of karma, of rebirth, of what it means to continue, not as fixed identity, but as unfolding momentum. And maybe by the end, you'll see that what carries on isn't some permanent soul, but a stream that becomes free, not by stopping, but by releasing its clinging. This is the beginning. No need to understand it all. Just rest, listen, and allow the rhythm of samsara to become something visible, something kind, something you no longer fear. We are not escaping the cycle. We are learning how to ride its rhythm with awareness. Like a breath, Like a wave, like the rising and falling of sleep itself, karma isn't punishment. As the body sinks further into stillness and the rhythm of breath softens like wind through reeds, we arrive at the word so often misunderstood. Karma. In many places, it's used like a cosmic threat. You'll get what's coming. Or, that's karma for you. But tonight, let's soften that idea. Let's uncoil it from fear and see what the Buddha actually meant. Karma doesn't mean punishment. It doesn't mean reward. It means action. That's all. Intentional action. And like all actions, karma has consequences not in the sense of retribution, but as simple continuation. Like when you drop a pebble in a pond, ripples spread. Not because the pond is angry, but because that's what water does. Karma is that ripple. What you think, what you say, what you do, they send waves into the world and into your own mind. Sometimes those waves return quickly. Sometimes they take years. Sometimes they echo into another life or into the quiet corners of sleep and memory. But they continue. Because karma isn't fate. It's momentum. Every action conditions the next. And every time you respond with mindfulness, with care, with honesty, you change the shape of those ripples. That's why the Buddha placed karma not in the hands of gods, but in your own. Because your freedom isn't outside of you. It's in how you meet the moment. Right now you're practicing karma. Not by doing, but by being. By staying. By listening. By allowing awareness to hold what arises instead of reacting. This too is karma. It's the kind that leads to peace. And just like unwholesome actions create suffering, wholesome actions, actions rooted in wisdom, compassion, truthfulness, create peace. Karma is intimate. It's not a system you get graded by. It's the very way your life unfolds. You may have seen it in your own day. When you speak sharply, your chest tightens. When you hold resentment, your energy drains. When you act out of love, you feel light. That's karma rippling inward long before it ripples outward. The Buddha never taught karma to scare us. He taught it to empower us, to remind us that every moment, even now, is a seed. And the seed you plant is the fruit you taste. So what seeds are growing in you tonight? Maybe fatigue, maybe kindness, maybe restlessness or gratitude. Let them come, let them go. And notice what remains when you stop feeding them, because karma doesn't bind you, clinging does. And when you release clinging, even the seeds that were once planted begin to lose their power. They may sprout, but they don't define you. You can choose a new action, a new response, a new way of being. That's the freedom within karma. It is never static. It is always moving, just like you. Tonight, let your stillness be the karma you plant. Let your gentle attention become the cause of peace that follows you into sleep. And if something stirs in you, a memory, a regret, a sharp edge of self-judgment, offer it this whisper. May this too be seen with compassion. May this too become part of my path. Because karma doesn't need punishment. It needs awareness. And from that awareness, a new world unfolds. One breath at a time. One soft choice at a time. How intent shapes the future. Now that you've softened into the truth of karma as cause and effect, we can begin to look more deeply, not just at what we do, but why we do it. Because in the Buddha's teaching, karma isn't simply about action, it's about intention. Satana, that's the word in Pali. It means the volition, the inward movement, the shaping force behind your choices. It's not just the deed that matters, it's the heart behind it. A kind word said for manipulation plants a different seed than a kind word born from care. The same action, but two different intentions, two different ripples into the stream of becoming. Right now you're breathing, maybe listening, maybe drifting. And even in this, there is intention, however subtle, to stay, to be still, to let peace settle deeper in you. That intention matters. It becomes a thread. And with each moment you choose presence, that thread is woven into something steady, something soft, something free. The Buddha once said, "It is volition, monks, that I call karma. For having willed one acts by body, speech, and mind." So tonight, notice the small places where intent lives, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet turning of the heart. The choice to breathe rather than rush. The choice to stay with discomfort rather than flee it. The choice to release a story or forgive a part of yourself you've carried for too long. These are karmic moments, and they shape what follows, not as a punishment or reward, but as momentum. Like a path gradually veering in a new direction, step by step, intention by intention. Even now you can feel it. What is the tone behind your attention? Is it gentle? Is it demanding? Is it curious? When you notice that tone, you begin to reclaim your future. Because intentions don't just direct the moment. They carve the shape of who you become. And becoming is the essence of samsara, not rebirth into bodies alone, but rebirth into patterns, roles, identities that solidify with repetition. Each time you grasp the self, hardens. Each time you let go, the self becomes light again. That's how karma works through intention. It either tightens the self or frees it. And you get to choose, moment to moment, breath by breath, softly, sincerely. No judgment, no pressure, just a quiet asking, why am I doing this? And if the answer is fear, be gentle. If the answer is craving, be honest. You don't need to force change. You only need to see clearly. Clarity itself is enough to shift the current. Because when intention becomes conscious, karma becomes kind. When action is shaped by awareness, the future is shaped by peace. You are not the prisoner of your past. You are the guardian of your present. And through this present, you shape the life to come. Even tonight, especially tonight, your gentle resting is part of that. The intention to sleep to listen to, soften these, are not wasted. They are the beginning of a new karmic stream. And the beautiful truth is it doesn't take much. A single breath held in kindness, a single word withheld in patience, a single moment where you choose stillness over reaction. These plant powerful seeds, and you may not see them grow right away, but the stream remembers, the heart remembers, and slowly, so do you. So let that remembering be your guide tonight. Let each breath be a vow. Not a promise to be perfect, but a promise to stay with intention, to walk gently, to plant wisely, to live as if peace were possible, because it is. And it begins with the heart that chooses it. What really continues after death? As you rest now, so still, beneath the soft hush of your own breath, a deeper question begins to rise. Quiet, ancient, mysterious. What carries on? When this body sleeps, its final sleep, when thought stops, when breath no longer stirs the chest, what if anything continues? The Buddha never offered a simple answer, because this question, what is reborn, cannot be answered with logic alone. It must be felt. It must be sat with, not solved. But there is a gentle doorway into this mystery. And it begins not with death, but with the present moment. Right now, you're not the same as you were an hour ago. Your thoughts have changed. Your feelings have shifted. Even the body has softened. So what remains? There is something that continues, but it isn't fixed. It isn't a soul or a self in the way we often imagine. It's more like a stream, a flow of habits, tendencies, intentions, memories, and impressions, what Buddhist teachings call the mind stream. Not a solid identity, but a flowing current. Each moment feeds the next. Each intention carries forward. And just as a flame can light another candle without anything material being transferred, so too does the life you live ignite what continues beyond it. Not because you persist, but because your momentum does. That's the mystery of rebirth. Not the travel of a soul, but the unfolding of karma. The continuation of causes and conditions shaped by how you lived, how you loved, how you clung or let go. In the Buddha's words, this body composed of the four elements is subject to wear and dissolution. But the stream of consciousness conditioned by craving and clinging flows on. But this stream of consciousness is not you. It is not a fixed self. It is not someone watching from behind your eyes. It is a process, like fire, like wind, like music. What carries on is not identity, but tendency. Like water finding the same groove in a mountainside after every rain. It's not the same drop, but the same direction. This can be comforting, and it can be confronting, because it means there's no solid me that continues. But it also means there's no solid me that can be destroyed. Just process, just movement, just karma unfolding. And within that unfolding, the potential for liberation. Because if what continues is constructed, then it can also be unconstructed. If it's shaped by craving, it can be reshaped by wisdom. And that means your freedom is never out of reach. It means that even as you lie here, quiet, open, held by the dark, you are shaping the current of what comes next. Not by effort, not by force, but by the tone of your mind, by the quality of your presence, by the stillness that no longer clings to becoming. So it continues after death, only what has been set in motion. And what is being set in motion right now? The choice to rest, the wish to understand, the soft current of compassion growing in the heart. These are the seeds. And though you may not see where they land, they will bloom. Somewhere, somehow. Maybe in this life, maybe in another. And maybe you won't need to ask what continues, because you'll have found the space where nothing needs to. The space where clinging ends. The space where peace begins. Let that be enough for now. Let the question remain not as a problem to solve, but as a doorway to presence, to wonder, to the mystery that lives inside your very breath. Misunderstanding, rebirth in the West. So often, when we speak of rebirth, especially in modern times, especially in the West, it's painted with fantasy. A soul, like a pearl, leaves one body, floats through space, and slips into another, as if there were a you that travels intact from lifetime to lifetime like luggage on a carousel. But the Buddha didn't describe it this way. He didn't speak of a permanent soul moving between lifetimes. He spoke of causes and conditions continuing like fire, passing from one candle to the next without a flame being transferred. Rebirth in this light isn't about you living 1,000 lives. It's about karma continuing its ripple in subtle and interdependent ways. And yet this subtle truth often gets lost. Because we crave continuity. We crave identity. We want the self to last forever, even if it's in another form. But that craving is exactly what keeps the wheel of samsara turning. The Buddha taught anatta, no fixed self, no eternal I, no unchanging witness behind the eyes, not as a philosophy to memorize, but as a medicine for suffering. Because as long as you believe there's a solid self that must be preserved, you will cling. You will fear. You will suffer. And when rebirth is misunderstood as a guarantee of future identity, it can become just another thing to grasp, something to fear or to fantasize about. But rebirth, properly understood, is not a promise of permanence. It's a teaching of causality. What you do, how you live, the mental patterns you cultivate, they shape what unfolds. Just like how the thoughts you fall asleep with can influence your dreams. The Buddha asked, not that you believe this blindly, but that you observe. He said, see for yourself what leads to suffering and what leads to its end. And when you see the mind clinging to identity, to the story of me across lifetimes, you can gently release. Because clinging, not death, is the true cause of rebirth. It's not the body that insists on returning. It's the unfinished business of grasping. The wish to be someone, the fear of being no one, the longing for continuity. But when you look more closely, you find that even now, the self is not solid. It changes from mood to mood, from moment to moment. You are not the same person when angry as when calm, not the same in sorrow as in stillness. So how could that which is always changing ever be a thing that endures? This is where freedom begins, not in finding the true self that survives death, but in seeing through the illusion of self altogether. And when that illusion fades, even for a moment, a profound peace can arise. Because you're no longer trying to protect something that was never truly there. You can live more fully, love more openly, die more gently. The Buddha once said, just as a chariot is made of parts, wheels, axle frame, reins, so too is the person made of parts. But no fixed self can be found. And when you understand this, rebirth loses its weight. It becomes a natural process, not something to fear, not something to crave, just movement, just unfolding, just a ripple in the stream. So tonight, let go of needing to know what comes next. Let go of needing to define who you are, and simply rest in the flow, in the breath, in the tender truth that you are not fixed and therefore not trapped. Because what is not solid can also be free. And that freedom is already blooming in the stillness between your thoughts. The flame, not the fuel. Imagine this. A candle lights another candle, and that flame, it spreads. From one wick to the next, light continues. But the original flame doesn't move. It doesn't travel like a pebble tossed through space. It simply ignites what's ready to burn. This was the image the Buddha offered when someone asked what continues at death. Not a soul, not a fixed identity, but a flame of continuity, one that depends entirely on causes and conditions. It's not the same flame, but it isn't something different either. This is the mystery of rebirth without a self. Something carries on, but not someone. What carries on is momentum, intention, tendencies, habits of mind and heart that have not yet been released. And they find the next available wick, the next birth, the next moment, the next place to continue. But there is no you that migrates. It's the flame, not the fuel, that is passed on. The body is fuel, thoughts roles, even names fuel, temporary, finite, consuming and consumed. But the movement of becoming that flame of craving, clinging reaction is what continues until it is no longer fed. This understanding softens everything because it means there's no soul to protect, no fixed self to defend, no eternal identity to carry forward, only causes and conditions gathering and dissolving like clouds in the sky. It also means that liberation isn't about saving something permanent. It's about releasing the need for permanence. The Buddha's path doesn't promise an eternal you. It offers the peace of not needing one, of being part of the great unfolding without clinging to a center. And when that's seen, truly seen, the heart can rest. Because what suffers is not the body, not the mind, not even the stream. What suffers is the belief in ownership. I am this. I must continue. I must not end. But the flame doesn't ask to last forever. It simply burns. And when the fuel runs out, it goes out. Not in despair, not in violence, but in peace. The Buddha called that peace nirvana, the cooling of the fire, the ceasing of becoming, the end of grasping, the end of continuation because nothing is being pushed forward. Right now, your thoughts might be flickering like little flames, some warm, some restless. But if you stop feeding them, even for a breath, you may feel that same cooling, a kind of release that doesn't need explanation. A quiet not of nothingness, but of sufficiency, of this is enough, of I don't need to chase the next moment, of I am resting, not becoming. That's where the fire dims, not from exhaustion, but from freedom. And that's what the Buddha wanted us to discover, that you are not the flame, you are not the fuel, you are not the smoke. You are the space that can hold them all without clinging. And when there is no clinging, there is no rebirth. Not because something is lost, but because nothing is being pushed forward. So tonight, if the mind wants to travel to future lives, to past regrets, to endless loops of who you might become, just return. Return to this breath. Return to this body. Return to this soft, flickering moment, and let the flame rest. Let it glow without grasping. Let it dim without fear, because the fire has burned long enough. And now it is time for stillness, samsara, as restlessness, not hell. When people hear the word samsara, they sometimes imagine a burning wheel, a cosmic punishment, a spinning nightmare of life after life after life. But tonight, let's set that image down. Let's not think of samsara as a fiery prison or a cycle we are doomed to endure. Let's feel it more closely. Feel it in the quiet corners of the mind, in the moments when you are still, yet still not at peace. That's samsara. Not a place, not a realm, not even a concept to grasp. It's restlessness, the underlying tension of becoming, the reaching, the grasping, the subtle not enough that lives under everything. It's the itch to change what is, the habit of running from what hurts, the craving to hold on to what feels good even though it's always slipping away. You've felt it, haven't you? Even when all is quiet, something in the mind reaches forward, or loops backward, or whispers, "This isn't quite it yet," that the Buddha said is dukkha, the first noble truth. The feeling that life as we grasp it is always just out of reach. Samsara is the name we give to that cycle of dissatisfaction. It's not punishment, it's a pattern. And more importantly, it's a pattern we can recognize. And when we recognize it, we can begin to soften it. The Buddha didn't condemn samsara. He simply pointed out its nature, that it spins because of craving, because of aversion, because of ignorance, not because life is bad, but because we keep reaching through life with minds that don't know how to rest. And rest is the antidote. Rest that doesn't resist. Rest that doesn't demand. Rest that doesn't say, "When will this be over?" but instead whispers, "This is enough for now." Even now, in the softness of your breath, you may feel that samsara come. The mind wanting more understanding. the heart tugging toward tomorrow, the body asking for a different position, a different sound, a different feeling. That's okay. That too is samsara. And it doesn't need to be fought. It only needs to be seen. Because the moment you see it clearly, you're no longer inside it unconsciously. You are watching, breathing, becoming aware, and awareness interrupts the cycle. Not by force, but by offering an alternative. A pause, a stillness, a resting that says, I see the urge to spin, and tonight, I'll stay. The Buddha compared samsara to a wheel turned by craving, and liberation to the moment that wheel stops turning not because it was broken, but because nothing is pushing it forward. That's the power of mindfulness. It's the gentle breaking of the cycle, not with resistance, but with presence. So tonight, let yourself rest in the awareness of samsara. Not to reject it, not to fear it, but to understand it. To see how it shows up in the body as restlessness, in the mind as chasing, in the heart as longing, and then to do something radically simple to stop chasing, to sit still, to let go. Not forever, just now, just for this breath, just until the spinning slows. And maybe then you'll discover that samsara isn't a prison. It's just a habit that can be unlearned with each gentle act of letting go, even now, especially now. As the night deepens and the silence grows wider and the heart remembers it is already home. The chain of becoming. Let's take a deeper look now at how this cycle sustains itself, not in theory, but in direct experience. The Buddha spoke of something called dependent origination, paticca samuppada in the ancient language. It sounds complex, but it reveals something beautifully simple. Nothing arises on its own. Everything is conditioned. Each part of the chain is supported by what comes before it and supports what follows. A loop, a wheel, a pattern of becoming. So how does it begin? Not at birth. Not even at the first conscious thought. It begins in ignorance, not stupidity, not failure, but not seeing clearly. When we don't see the true nature of things, we begin to react, to construct, to crave, to become. The chain goes something like this. Ignorance conditions, volitional formations, the patterns of intention of will. Those lead to consciousness, which leads to name and form mind and body, then to sense bases, to contact, to feeling, to craving, to clinging, to becoming. And from becoming, we move to birth. And from birth, inevitably, to aging and death, along with sorrow, lamentation, despair. That is the wheel. And at any point, we can begin to see it in motion. Right now, you feel a sensation, perhaps restlessness. That's contact. It gives rise to feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. If unpleasant craving may arise, I wish this would stop. Craving can become clinging. I must change this. And clinging can become becoming a new thought, a new reaction, a new identity momentarily born. Even in sleep, this wheel may continue in dreams, shaped by desire, intention held in the belly, and unresolved thoughts circling the edges of rest. But here's the gift. At any link in the chain, you can wake up. You can pause. When feeling arises, you can notice it without reacting. When craving stirs, you can name it, see it, and let it pass. And just like that, the chain weakens. The wheel slows. The cycle of samsara isn't broken by force. It's dissolved by insight, by noticing the chain as it arises within you. Because it's not something out there. It's right here in your relationship to experience. In your tendency to cling to construct a self around sensations, to say, this is mine, this is me, this is who I must protect or change. But what if you didn't do that tonight? What if when a thought arises, you simply let it float? What if when a sensation comes, you rest with it just for a breath, without naming, fixing, escaping? That's the beginning of unbinding. You don't need to recite the whole chain. You only need to feel where you are in it. Right now, you might be at contact, or at feeling, or already caught in clinging. Wherever you are is the perfect place to soften, to stop the cycle, not with control, but with compassion. The Buddha didn't present dependent origination as a metaphysical riddle. He offered it so we could understand our suffering, so we could see how it is made and how it unravels. And it always unravels the same way it was woven link by link. So breathe now and feel into that chain, not to analyze, but to witness. To remember that nothing is isolated, that every moment arises because of the last, and that you, in this stillness, are not trapped. You are watching, you are seeing, you are already free enough to begin again. And that beginning starts with this breath, this pause, this choice not to follow what once pulled you. The wheel may turn, but you are not the wheel. You are the awareness that remembers how to rest, what you carry into sleep. The day may be over, the body still, the lights dimmed, but the mind often continues walking even after the feet have stopped. Thoughts loop, emotions echo. The mood of the day carries on like perfume on a pillow. What we carry into sleep is not random. It's a continuation. Just like one life flows into another, one moment shapes the next. And sleep, like death, is not an end but a passage, a soft crossing where intention, energy, and habit pass through the veil and ripple forward. Have you ever noticed how the mind enters sleep with whatever was unresolved? A worry revisits in a dream. A kindness brings a sense of peace. A resentment replays itself in the silent hours. This, too, is karma. Not cosmic judgment, just the continuation of momentum. The Buddha didn't speak much about sleep in the modern sense, but he spoke constantly about continuity. And what you cultivate in waking continues into resting. That's why right effort, right mindfulness, and right intention aren't just for meditation. They are for sleep, for dreams, for the moments when the conscious mind fades and deeper patterns take over. Tonight, as you lie here, notice what remains. What energies linger? Is the breath tight or loose? Is the heart soft or guarded? What thoughts repeat without being invited? This is your mental karma. Not in a moral sense, but in a rhythmic one. You are inheriting the echo of your own mind stream. But there is something beautiful here. You can influence it. You can plant a different seed before you drift away. A gentle phrase, a whisper of compassion, an intention to release rather than repeat. The Buddha once said, "Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of the mind." So, tonight, what will you ponder? What feeling will you invite to follow you into dreams, not because you need control, but because you are not helpless? The final thought before sleep can be a teacher, a medicine, a doorway. Some nights it may be gratitude, others forgiveness, sometimes simply letting go. You might offer yourself a small thought. Now may I sleep peacefully. May all beings find ease. May this breath be enough. It doesn't have to be profound, only sincere, because sleep, like rebirth, is shaped by the final moment of awareness before falling away. And your willingness to rest with presence can change everything that follows. Even in sleep, you are not abandoned by the path. The Dharma continues, softly, silently. It weaves itself into your rest, like wind into curtains, like moonlight on water. There is no effort required, only trust, only release, only the faint remembering that this night too is part of your practice. So breathe. And as the mind grows quiet, know that what you carry into sleep is not just thoughts. It is presence. It is care. It is the seed of awakening planted gently in the dark. Mind stream and memory. Close your eyes if they aren't already. Let the breath move in its own rhythm and feel the subtle stream flowing beneath thought. Not the story of who you are, not the facts you carry, but the current, the gentle, uninterrupted movement of one moment into the next. This, in Buddhist teachings, is sometimes called the mind stream. It's not a soul, not a fixed consciousness, but an unfolding series of mental events, thoughts, perceptions, sensations, impressions. Just like a river that appears continuous, but is always changing water, the mind stream appears stable, yet no single moment stays. Still patterns form. Just like a river curves into its banks, the mind stream flows into familiar grooves. And that flow, conditioned by karma, fed by attention shaped by habit, becomes what we call personality tendency, even fate. But it's not fate in the rigid sense. Because you can always step in, always pause, always begin to redirect the flow. It's important to remember this mind stream doesn't belong to you. There's no core self writing the current. There's only current. And yet it is deeply personal. Because this is the stream that remembers, not with logic, but with feeling, with impression. This is how memory arises in Buddhist thought, not stored in a single place, but embedded in the momentum of the stream. Why does a certain smell bring back a forgotten childhood scene? Why do dreams echo emotions you didn't express during the day? Because impressions are carried forward, not always clearly, but faithfully. The mind stream holds them until they ripple to the surface again. This is how rebirth works too. Not as a memory bank, but as a continuation of tendencies. You may not remember your past lives, but your mind stream carries their shape. Just as a plant remembers the seed, not with thought, but with direction. Tonight, you may feel the stream in your own body. A sudden image, a tightness that seems older than this moment, a longing that doesn't have a clear cause. These aren't mistakes. They are echoes, whispers from the current, and you don't have to interpret them. You only need to listen. The mind stream is not a threat. It's a record of becoming. And with awareness, you can soften its grip. Not by stopping it, but by resting with it without clinging. When you meditate, you're not trying to still the stream. You're learning to sit on the bank, to watch it flow, to stop throwing more things into it. And in that stillness, clarity comes. You begin to see the patterns, the loops, the ways you recreate suffering by reacting the same way again and again. But here's the gift. When you see a pattern, you're no longer owned by it. You can breathe instead of react. You can forgive instead of repeat. You can let go instead of grasp. And the stream, so accustomed to turning toward sorrow, can begin to turn toward peace. Right now, this is happening. In your stillness, in your awareness, in your letting go. You are shaping the mind stream not through force, but through presence. And over time, that stream becomes gentler, clearer, more awake. So tonight, if your thoughts feel like a flood, don't worry. Let them flow. Let them carry what they need. And know that the very act of watching is an act of transformation. You are not trying to dam the river. You are becoming its witness. And in that witnessing, you are already changing its course toward stillness, toward freedom, toward the quiet light that waits beneath every current. No self, but not nothing. You've heard it before. There is no self. But what does that really mean? Does it mean you don't exist? That everything is an illusion? That there's no one home behind your eyes? Not quite. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, or no self, isn't a denial of experience. It's a gentle reminder that the self is not what it seems. It's not fixed. It's not solid. And it's not who you truly are. That doesn't mean you're nothing. It means you are not a thing. You are not an object. You are not a possession. You are not a role or a title or a name passed down. You are a process, a flowing field of experience, arising and passing just like clouds in a wide empty sky. In this teaching, the Buddha wasn't trying to rob us of identity. He was offering freedom from the burden of identity, because when you believe in a solid self, you must defend it. You must protect it. You must prop it up when it feels fragile, which is always. But when you see, clearly you realize the I you're holding on to isn't the same from one moment to the next. What was you 5 minutes ago? Where is that feeling now? Where did that thought go? The self appears and disappears like a flame flickering in the wind. And yet something continues. Not someone, but the stream of becoming, of habits, of impressions, of karma. This is why rebirth doesn't require a soul, because continuation doesn't mean duplication. It's not the same you who wakes up each morning, but there's continuity, a thread of memory, of intention. That's enough. Enough to be responsible, enough to be free. No self doesn't mean you vanish. It means you don't need to cling to the one who's here. You don't need to solidify the fluid. You don't need to carve permanence into what was always meant to move. And in that, there is deep peace. You can stop defending the image. You can stop fearing change. You can stop performing your existence. Because life is not asking you to be someone. It's inviting you to be present, to be awake to the moment, not obsessed with the mask. Right now, notice how the sense of self flickers. You may feel present, then distracted, then tired, then alert. And through it all, you're still here. But who or what is you? Is it the body, the thought, the voice that says, "This is me"? Or is it the awareness behind it all, the openness that allows each wave to rise and fall? This is the mystery the Buddha pointed to, not to confuse us, but to free us. Because when you stop trying to hold on to a fixed self, you begin to touch something softer, something that doesn't need to be defined, something that simply is. And this something is not a new identity. It's the space where all identities come and go. It's the peace of not having to be anyone in particular. Tonight you can rest in that space. You don't need to remember who you were this morning. You don't need to worry who you'll be tomorrow. You can just be, without holding, without chasing, without pretending. Just a body, just breath, just awareness. No self is not an absence. It's a release of the armor, of the story, of the pressure to be anything other than here. Let that be your practice tonight. Not solving, not seeking, just resting in the openness that remains when I fades into silence. You are not nothing. You are not everything. You are this moment of presence alive, unfolding free. The karma you don't see. You've heard about karma as action, as intention, as the ripple of deeds made visible. But not all karma announces itself. Not all karma looks like an event, a circumstance, a thing you can point to. Some karma is quiet. Some karma is invisible. It moves beneath the surface of your daily life, like a slow, unseen current. This is the karma of habit. Not the habits of behavior alone, but the habits of attention, of mood, of reaction, the tendency to shut down when criticized, the way the heart contracts at praise, the subtle tightness that arises before sleep, not from what happened, but from how you've trained your mind to relate to it. These are karmic echoes, not from another lifetime, but from this morning, from yesterday, from the last 1,000 times you believed a thought without questioning it. The Buddha called this kind of karma mental formation sankhara. They shape the flavor of your experience. They color the moment before it's even begun. Have you ever walked into a room and felt heavy for no clear reason? Have you ever responded to someone you love in a way that felt old, like a script you didn't write, but couldn't stop acting out? That's karma too. The karma of unseen causes. The karma of repetition. And you don't need to blame yourself. You just need to see. Because the moment you see it, you are no longer blindly run by it. The habit becomes a choice. The script becomes optional. The reaction becomes a breath. Right now, in this very breath, there may be subtle karma rising. A mood, a twinge, a thought that says, "Why am I like this?" Pause. Notice it. Let it float. You are not here to judge the mind. You are here to witness its patterns without becoming them. That witnessing, that stillness, is how karma dissolves, not by denial, not by analysis, but by non-participation. You don't feed it. You don't fight it. You simply don't become it. The Buddha compared the mind to a field. Karma is the seed. Your attention is the water. Not every seed has to grow. Some can remain dormant. Some can be left unwatered. And others, seeds of compassion, of patience, can be fed gently with kindness. This is the unseen part of the practice. The cultivation no one notices. The letting go that looks like doing nothing. But it's not nothing. It's everything. Because most of the karma that shapes your life is the kind you don't even know you're carrying. Until now. Now you are listening. Now you are watching. Now you are learning to rest without reacting. And that's where new karma is born. Not in action, but in stillness. In the space that opens between stimulus and response. That space is your freedom. That space is your practice. That space is your path out of samsara. So tonight, let the invisible karma be seen. Not with blame, with love, with the gentle curiosity of someone meeting their oldest patterns and saying softly, "I see you. I don't have to follow you. You are not me." And then the field changes. The seeds shift. The river turns. Not all karma is visible, but all karma can be met with awareness. And awareness, like sunlight, touches everything. Even what was hidden. Even what was buried. Even what you are only now learning to release, craving and becoming. Somewhere beneath the habits of the day, beneath the tasks, the thoughts, the small aches in the body, there is a pull. It's subtle, but constant. It's the part of the mind that says, "Not yet, not this, something more." This is craving, not always loud, not always dramatic, but always leaning toward what's next, what's better, what feels just out of reach. In Buddhist teachings, craving is called tanha, thirst. It's the driving force of becoming, the urge to become someone, to fix this moment, to grasp something solid in a world that keeps changing. You feel it in simple ways, reaching for your phone when nothing's wrong, adding one more task before bed, replaying a conversation to get it right. That too is becoming. It's not just about future lives. Becoming happens moment to moment each time we resist what is and chase what isn't. And this is how rebirth unfolds, not just from body to body, but from thought to thought, mood to mood, identity to identity. You are born into the angry one, then reborn into the fixer, then reborn into the one trying to relax. And all the while craving is behind the curtain whispering, be more, be better, be anything but this. But what if we paused? What if we didn't feed the next becoming? The Buddha said, from craving comes becoming. But he also showed, from non-craving comes release. Let's try that now. Notice any leaning in your body, any expectation in the breath, any idea of how this moment should be. Can you soften it? Not to push it away, but to let it rest. Craving isn't a failure. It's just the mind trying to solve suffering in the only way it knows, by reaching. But tonight, you're learning something new. That peace isn't found by becoming more. It's found by being less entangled, by allowing this moment to be enough. Because when craving quiets, the need to become someone begins to dissolve. And when the need to become dissolves, so does the suffering that comes with it. It's not about suppressing desire. It's about seeing what happens when you don't act on it, when you let the wave rise and fall without grabbing it. There's great power in that, because most of your suffering doesn't come from what's missing, but from the grasping itself. When you stop feeding the fire, it cools. When you stop chasing identity, you find space. When you stop becoming, you discover what's always been here. Stillness, sufficiency, a presence that doesn't need to perform. This is the path of unbecoming, not loss, but liberation. Not emptiness, but the fullness of not needing to add more. So as you lie here, and the mind reaches for something, anything, see if you can smile at it. A soft inner smile, a gentle nod. Oh, there you are craving. Thank you. But not tonight. Tonight is for stillness, for resting, for remembering that becoming is optional, and who you truly are is already here beneath the craving, beneath the roles, beneath the restless unfolding of self. Just breath, just being, just this. Nothing more needed. Waking up in the dream. You've likely had this experience, a dream that felt real. You were running, speaking, feeling completely convinced, until something shifted, and suddenly you knew. This is a dream. That flicker of awareness didn't end the dream right away, but it changed your relationship to it. You became lucid, not lost, not swept away. Still dreaming, but now awake within it. This is what the Buddha meant when he spoke of waking up in samsara, because samsara too is like a dream, not because it's fake, but because of how we relate to it. We believe our thoughts completely. We identify with every role. We grasp at what shifts and suffer when it disappears. It's not the dream that hurts. It's forgetting that we're dreaming. The Buddha didn't ask us to reject the world. He asked us to see it clearly, to become aware within it, to recognize the dream as a dream, and in that recognition, to suffer less. Right now, you may still feel the remnants of your day, a conversation, a regret, a moment you wish had gone differently. You may feel tension in your chest or thoughts nudging the edges of rest. This too is a kind of dream, not illusion, but interpretation. Your mind is replaying, rewriting, trying to control what's already passed. And yet you can wake up. You can notice the thought and not follow it. You can feel the emotion and not become it. Just like in a lucid dream, you don't have to run. You don't have to fix. You don't have to believe. You just rest in awareness. The Buddha described mindfulness as the path to the deathless. Why? Because when you are mindful, you're no longer caught in becoming, no longer chasing, no longer reacting. You've stepped out of the dream and into presence, and presence doesn't cling. It sees thoughts arise and fade. It sees sensations build and soften. It sees fear come and go, and it doesn't make a self out of any of it. That's the difference between sleeping and waking. When asleep, we think this is me. When awake, we realize this is just passing through. This is where freedom lives, not in controlling the dream, but in knowing it's a dream. And in that knowing we relax. The shoulders release, the breath deepens, the heart softens. You're no longer fighting with shadows. You're no longer acting out a script. You're simply here, aware, open, lucid, even in the middle of it all. That's what the Buddha meant by awakening, not escaping the world, but seeing the world with clear eyes and an unburdened heart. And that clarity doesn't require enlightenment. It only requires a pause, a breath, a willingness to see the moment for what it is not, what the mind says it should be. So tonight, if the dream of the day still echoes, don't push it away. Just notice. You're dreaming, and now you're waking up, not with judgment, with tenderness. This is the mind doing what it does. This is the story playing itself out. And I am aware. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's the first soft step out of samsara and into peace. When the chain is broken up, to now you've seen how the cycle turns, how craving leads to clinging, clinging to becoming, and becoming to the rebirth of suffering again and again. But what happens when just for a moment you don't feed it? When you let the thought pass without chasing it? When you feel the discomfort but don't grasp for a distraction? That's when something extraordinary begins. The chain breaks. Not with thunder, not with fanfare, but with a breath, a pause, a whisper, a soft loosening where tightness once lived. The Buddha described this as freedom through insight, because when you truly see how one thing gives rise to another, you realize you don't have to play along. When you stop fueling, craving, becoming halts. When becoming halts, suffering doesn't arise. The wheel that spins your restlessness, your sorrow, your stress, it slows. And eventually it can stop. Not because you crushed it, but because you understood it. Like watching a machine run and calmly pulling the plug. Right now, you have that power. You may not realize it yet, but you do. Every moment of mindfulness is a moment that interrupts the cycle. You may think, but I didn't have a big insight. I didn't break through. But you paused. You noticed. You stayed. And in that staying, you let one link loosen. That's enough. Sometimes the break is dramatic, a sudden moment of clarity where clinging dissolves. Other times it's more like erosion. Subtle, gradual, a soft wearing away of reactivity. But both are part of freedom. The Buddha never promised we'd destroy the chain in one night. He only pointed to the possibility of release moment by moment, choice by choice. And this possibility is already alive in you. You've felt it before. A moment of stillness in the middle of chaos. A breath that interrupted a spiraling thought. A time when you chose silence over reaction. That was a link breaking. That was samsara loosening its grip. It doesn't mean you're free forever. It means you tasted freedom. And that taste changes everything. Because once the mind knows what it feels like to rest, without clinging, it starts to long for it, not as escape, but as home. This is why we practice, not to become perfect, but to return more easily to that still open space where the chain no longer controls us. Tonight, as you lie here, you may notice small moments where the pattern wants to continue. A thought that loops, a sensation that tightens, a reaction that whispers, "Follow me." But you don't have to. You can stay. You can soften. You can breathe. And when you do, a new possibility opens. A moment that is not defined by what came before. A future not shaped by habit, but by freedom. This is how samsara ends, not with a bang, but with awareness. With the simple, radical act of not continuing the old story. Just this breath, just this moment, no grasping, no resisting, no becoming, just being. And in that being, the chain breaks, not violently, but gently, like ice melting in spring, like a thread unspooling, like a mind remembering what peace feels like. You don't have to hold anything. You don't have to carry the past. Let it unravel. Let it fade. And rest in the space that remains. A space without becoming, without struggle, without end. Stories of rebirth in the Canon. There's a special kind of story in Buddhist tradition, quiet, poetic, and filled with deeper meaning. They're called the Jataka tales, stories of the Buddha's past lives, as a prince, as a deer, as a tree spirit, as a servant, a sage, a simple traveler. Each tale carries a thread of patience, generosity, resolve, or wisdom. And through these stories, we begin to understand rebirth isn't just about who we were, but about what we cultivated, what qualities lived on. In these ancient stories, there is no me that continues. There is just the pattern, the momentum, the flowering of past intention in new and unpredictable ways. Like when a candle lights another, and the shape of the flame carries on, but not the wax, not the wick. The Jataka tales aren't meant to be history. They're not there to prove or disprove. They're mirrors, metaphors, invitations to reflect on how our actions ripple forward even when we cannot see where they land. And they remind us gently that what we plant in this life matters beyond it. Because even if the I that speaks these words does not return in any form, the compassion we practice, the truth we speak, the love we live, they echo, they carry, they become someone else's breath, someone else's moment of stillness, someone else's glimpse of kindness when they need it most. This is the deeper meaning of rebirth. Not identity, but impact. Not permanence, but continuation. There's a Jataka story of the Bodhisattva as a wise rabbit offering his own body in a fire to feed a hungry traveler. It wasn't about heroism. It was about generosity so deep it let go of self completely. In the story, the traveler was a god in disguise, and the rabbit's image was burned into the moon as a symbol of selfless giving. Maybe you've seen it, that soft outline in the moonlight, like a shadow of quiet love. And maybe you felt something like that too. A moment when you gave without needing return. When you offered your time, your patience, your stillness, just because the world needed it. That's rebirth too. The rebirth of goodness in a world that forgets too easily. And even if you're never remembered by name, your actions continue. Not mystically, but humanly, beautifully, like a kind word that changes someone's day. Like the way your silence helps someone else speak. These too are Jataka moments. And when you see life this way, not as a straight line, but as a web of influence, you stop needing to know what happens after death. You start asking, what am I seeding now? What will grow from how I live? Because that's what continues. Not the self, but the trace, the scent, the impression. And the more you live with awareness, the more you can choose what trace you leave behind. Not for glory, but for love. The Jataka tales are not about reward. They're about remembering that this life is part of something wider, not in time, but in tenderness. So tonight rest, knowing that your presence matters. Your peace matters. Your effort to let go, to forgive, to be kind, it matters. Because somewhere, someday, someone will receive the light you kindled here. And though they'll never know your name, they will breathe a little easier. And that is enough. What carries on isn't you, but it feels like you. You might be wondering now, if there is no fixed self, no solid soul, then what is it that carries on? What makes this stream feel so personal, so continuous? Why does the story feel like your story, even when it's always changing? The Buddha taught what continues is not you, but it often feels like you, because it arises in the shape of your habits, your tendencies, your mental formations. It's not the same river every time, but the current follows a familiar path. Like wind, picking up a scent and carrying it across a valley, you may no longer be the one who sent it, but the fragrance lingers. The self in Buddhist thought is a convenient fiction, useful for communication, necessary for survival, but ultimately empty of fixed essence. Still, this fiction doesn't disappear easily. It's held together by memory, by identification, by repetition. When you wake up each morning, you remember who you are. Not because you're finding a permanent self, but because you're piecing together a familiar shape from the scattered experiences of mind and body. And that shape, that story feels real. It feels intimate. It feels like you. But it isn't solid. You are not the child you once were. You are not the thought you had 10 minutes ago. You are not the mood you'll feel tomorrow. And yet something flows through it all. Not identity, but continuity. Like music. Note by note, it changes. But the melody has a shape, a feeling, a presence. This is how rebirth works too. Not as the transmission of a fixed being, but as the arising of conditions so shaped by previous moments that they resemble what came before. The new life doesn't remember the old, but it may carry its fragrance, its longings, its unfinished questions, not as punishment, not as reward, but as unfolding, cause and effect, karma, tendency. And here is where it becomes personal, not because you are being reborn, but because the feeling of self continues to appear until it is understood and released. This is why the Buddha emphasized awareness. Not to erase the sense of self through denial, but to see it clearly. To notice how it arises, how it clings, how it becomes the center of everything, and how it can soften when seen with gentle attention. Tonight, notice how you appear. The version of you that wants to rest. The version that wonders if you're doing it right. The version that hopes to wake up with less suffering. Each one is a wave, a moment, a mask gently placed on awareness. And when the mask is seen, there's no need to tear it off. Just smile. Let it fade. Let it dissolve into the space from which it came. Because what carries on is not who you are, but what you have yet to release. And what you can release you are not bound by. This is why understanding is so freeing. It turns what feels inevitable into something optional. It shows you the space between thought and identification, between sensation and story, between feeling and self. And in that space, freedom blooms. You are not the self that carries forward. You are the awareness that watches it arise. You are the pause between identities. You are the openness that doesn't cling. And from that place, there is nothing to fear in rebirth. Because rebirth only continues as long as we grasp. So tonight, grasp less. Not as a demand, just as an invitation. Let the breath pass. Let the thought pass. Let even the sense of me pass. And notice what remains. Not absence, not nothing, but presence. Vast, luminous, unbound. Peace comes when you stop clinging. It may sound simple, even too simple. Peace begins when clinging ends. But that's what the Buddha taught, and what we slowly begin to feel the more we listen. Not when problems are solved. Not when everything goes your way. Not when the mind is perfectly silent, but when clinging loosens. Clinging is the real source of suffering. Not pain, not change, not loss, but the grasping at what we can't hold at pleasure, identity, certainty, permanence. And clinging isn't just physical. It's emotional, mental, energetic. It's the voice that says, this must stay. This must go. This must become something more. Clinging doesn't trust the moment. Clinging doesn't rest. And peace, true peace, cannot arise in a clenched fist. But here's the gentle truth. You don't have to force yourself to let go. That's just another form of clinging. What you can do is notice clinging. See it. Feel it. And let it soften in its own time. Right now, you might feel it in your body. A subtle tension in the jaw. A tiny leaning forward in the breath. A wish for this moment to feel a little more peaceful. That's clinging. No need to judge it. Just meet it with awareness. Ah, this too is here. The Buddha taught that clinging has many faces, clinging to sensual pleasure, to views, to rituals, and most of all to self. The belief, this is me, this is mine, I am this. And every time we tighten around that belief, we suffer. But every time we loosen, even just a little, something opens. It's not dramatic. It's not always immediate, but it's real. Like loosening a knot. Like releasing a held breath. Like realizing that you don't have to keep carrying what was never yours to hold. This is why the Buddha's path isn't about rejecting life. It's about relating to life without needing it to be different. It's about living with impermanence, not against it. Right now, you can feel that in your own breath. Each inhale comes. Each exhale goes. You don't cling to the next breath. You just allow it. And peace is like that. It arrives not when we seize it, but when we stop interfering. When we allow things to rise and fall as they always have, as they always will. You don't have to give up everything. You only have to let go of the grasping. And sometimes that starts with one small act, not correcting the thought, not chasing the feeling, not fixing the discomfort, just sitting with it, breathing with it, trusting that it too will pass. Because everything passes. The joy, the sorrow, the craving, the fear. And when you stop clinging to one and pushing away the other, you discover a space that holds them all with quiet compassion. That space is your true refuge, not the thing you cling to, but the awareness that no longer needs to cling. The Buddha called this freedom, and you don't need to reach the end of the path to taste it. You can taste it now, in this letting go, in this quiet, in this breath that you don't try to control. It's okay if clinging returns. It always does. But now you recognize it. You can greet it gently, smile at it, and say, I see you, but I don't need you to be at peace. And then you rest, in a peace that isn't made but revealed. Sleep as a practice of letting go. Each night, the world asks you to do something profoundly brave, to stop, to release, to trust. Sleep is not just rest. It is a kind of surrender. You lay down your body, your plans, your roles. You soften your grip on thought and let the world continue without you. Sleep is a quiet rehearsal for letting go. And in that way, it is deeply connected to the Dharma, because the very heart of the Buddha's path is the path of release. Release from craving, from clinging, from becoming. And sleep gives you the chance to practice that every single night, without judgment, without effort, only this breath, this falling away, this movement into stillness. The ancients often spoke of sleep as a kind of death, but not to frighten, to awaken, to remind us that we don't need to fear endings, because what we call end is often just another shift in awareness. When you sleep, you don't cease to be. You simply stop needing to be anything specific. The you of memory dissolves. The you of effort vanishes. And yet, you continue, softly, spaciously, free from the usual burdens. This is why, in some Buddhist traditions, sleep is considered part of practice, not something to escape into, but something to enter mindfully, with awareness, with reverence, with the same tenderness you'd bring to a final breath. Right now you're approaching that threshold, and you can walk toward it not as someone leaving the world, but as someone letting go of it just for a while. You might notice the body relaxing, the thoughts becoming slower, less urgent. Even if the mind tries to stay active, you don't have to follow. You can say to each thought, "Thank you. But I'm not holding you tonight." You can say to each tension, "You don't have to protect me now." Because sleep is safety. It is permission to let down every defense, to return to the simplicity of just being. Like a leaf settling into water, like a bird returning to its nest, like the mind returning to its own quiet source. And this too is practice, the practice of trust, of release, of remembering that your value is not in doing, but in simply being. Even the Buddha slept. Even the wisest minds needed rest, because rest is not weakness. It is sacred. It is a bow to impermanence, a soft nod to the truth that everything moves and everything pauses. So tonight, sleep as a letting go, not as escape, but as union with the natural rhythm of the body, the breath, and the unfolding of the world. You don't have to be anyone. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to carry the weight of tomorrow. Let it be. Let it all be. And in that release, you may discover that this too is awakening. Not with eyes open, but with the heart open. Not with effort, but with ease. Let sleep be your temple tonight. Enter it as you would enter a sacred space, slowly, silently, with gratitude. And may you remember, even as dreams arise and fade, that peace is never far. It lives in every letting go. And you tonight are practicing that peace with every breath. Ethics, without fear. Somewhere along the way, many came to believe that karma means punishment. That if you do something wrong, you'll suffer. That the universe keeps score. But that's not the spirit of the Buddha's teaching. In the Dhamma, ethics are not a set of threats. They are a path of kindness, a way of living that supports clarity, peace, and freedom. Not rules to avoid harm, but guides to cultivate love. This is called esle, ethical conduct, one of the three pillars of the path alongside meditation and wisdom. And it begins always with compassion. The precepts like not killing, not stealing, not speaking harshly, they're not about morality in the rigid sense. They're about reducing suffering, yours and others. And the Buddha didn't teach these to shame us into behaving. He offered them because a heart burdened by guilt, a mind stirred by deceit or cruelty, cannot rest deeply. And resting deeply truly in the stillness of awareness is what this path is about. That's why ethics matter, not to gain merit, not to avoid hell, but to feel peace in your own heart. Tonight, you may notice a memory arising, a moment you regret, a word you wish you hadn't spoken. Let it come. Let it breathe. And meet it not with fear, but with understanding. You don't need to fix the past. You only need to hold it in the present light of awareness. When the Buddha spoke of karma, he spoke of habitual energy, the ripple of cause and effect. But he also spoke of freedom from karma. And that freedom begins when you meet your own life with honesty and compassion. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. And this is why ethical living isn't a demand. It's an invitation to live simply, to speak truthfully, to act with care. Because when your life aligns with your heart, the mind grows quiet. You stop fearing karma because your steps leave no stain. They leave peace. They leave the kind of silence that helps others feel safe in your presence. And when that happens, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to justify who you are. Your life becomes your refuge. Right now, that possibility is here, not through big promises, but through small choices. To let go of the story, to soften the judgment, to offer a whisper of forgiveness to yourself. Because the ethical path doesn't begin with control, it begins with care. And as care deepens, you realize you don't want to harm. You don't want to deceive. Not because you'll be punished, but because it feels heavy to carry anything but truth. This is ethics without fear. Living not out of worry for consequence, but out of love for clarity. It's not always easy, but it is simple. And you've already taken many steps by listening, by pausing, by choosing stillness over reactivity. These too are ethical choices, not seen by the world, but felt in the body. In the way your breath eases when nothing is hidden. In the way your chest opens when there's no shame to carry. This is why the Buddha said, "The wise who live with right conduct shine like a white lotus in muddy water." You don't have to be perfect to shine. You only need to be sincere. And tonight, that sincerity is your light. It's what brings peace to this breath, and the next, and the one after that. So rest now, not because you've done everything right, but because you've walked in the direction of goodness. And that direction is the path of freedom, rebirth, in this very moment. We often think of rebirth as something distant, something that happens after death in some other body, some other time. But the Buddha taught that rebirth happens here now, in this very mind, from moment to moment. You don't have to wait for another lifetime. Rebirth happens every time you forget yourself and become caught in a thought. It happens when anger arises and you become the angry one. It happens when fear grips the chest and you become the one in danger. It happens when the craving appears and you become the one who must have. These are all births, tiny mental rebirths, and they happen countless times each day. Subtle moments when we grasp at identity and construct a self to protect, to justify, to become. This is bhava becoming, the stage just before birth in the dependent origination cycle. And if becoming continues, then birth happens, not necessarily in a physical sense, but as a new you rising in the mind, a self made of thoughts, a self made of fear, a self made of hope. And this is why mindfulness is so powerful, because every time you bring awareness to the moment you interrupt that rebirth. You feel the craving arise, but you don't follow. You feel the thought spin, but you don't grasp. And in that moment, there is no becoming. There is no rebirth. There is only presence. Still, open, free. Even now, you can sense this in your own experience. Notice the soft shifting of identity, the way the mind moves from one shape to the next. The listener, the thinker, the one who is tired, the one who is calm. These are masks, flowing and dissolving. And in between them, there is something quieter, not a fixed self, not a hidden soul, but awareness, the space where all of these selves arise and pass away. The Buddha never asked us to stop rebirth by suppressing life. He asked us to stop clinging to it, to notice the way we continually recreate ourselves, and to rest in the space that needs no self to be at peace. This is the profound simplicity of the path. To be reborn again and again in thought, and to recognize each birth as optional. Each moment offers a choice to become or to let go, to grasp or to soften, to spin the wheel or to pause and return to what does not spin. That return is your freedom. That pause is the breaking of the cycle. And it happens not at the end of the journey, but right here. In the breath, you are breathing. In the body, you're resting in. In the mind, you're watching with kindness. This is where the Dharma lives. Not in theories, not in distant realms, but in how you meet this moment. So if you notice the mind becoming someone again, just smile. A gentle smile. Oh, I see you becoming. Not tonight. And return. Return to the breath, to the silence beneath the story, to the clarity that doesn't need a name. This is rebirth too. Not of identity, but of freedom. The kind that doesn't seek escape, but rests in what's already here. Unborn, unmade, unshaken. So let each moment be a new beginning. Not as someone new, but as the same awareness. Finally remembering it doesn't have to become anything at all. What makes this life sacred? Among all the forms in this world, from the insect to the eagle, from the blade of grass to the forest, there is one that holds a rare and quiet power. This human life, not because it's grand, not because it's permanent, but because it holds the unique potential to see, to understand, to awaken. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha compared the chance to be born human to a turtle surfacing once every 100 years in a vast ocean placing its head precisely through a floating wooden yoke. That rare, that precious. You have that chance now, not because of merit alone, but because conditions aligned, because karma ripened, because for now you can hear the Dharma, you can reflect, you can question, you can pause, you can walk the path. That is a gift, and the sacredness of this life doesn't depend on how much you achieve. It depends on how deeply you live, how honestly you see, how gently you walk. Even now, in the stillness of your room, you can feel it, the quiet opportunity of being aware. You're not just surviving. You're noticing. You're contemplating. You're returning to the breath. And that makes this moment holy, not because of any ritual, but because of your presence. In Buddhist cosmology, there are many realms of suffering, of desire, of immense pleasure. But only the human realm offers the balance of joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, just enough clarity to seek freedom, just enough suffering to know why it matters. And that balance is what makes your life sacred. Because in this balance, you can let go. You can understand. You can choose differently. You may not feel extraordinary. You may not feel ready. But the Dharma doesn't ask you to be ready. It asks you to be here. And you are. Breathing, listening, awakening. This life doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be impressive. It only needs to be met with presence, with honesty, with care. And in doing so, you fulfill its rare purpose. Because a life that pauses to see is a life that transforms. A life that asks what is true beneath the noise is already opening the door to freedom. So tonight, remember how rare this is. This moment, this awareness, this breath. Let it be enough. Let it be sacred. Not because you achieved something, but because you stopped running. You turned toward yourself, toward the Dharma, toward the possibility that peace can be found not later, but now. This life is a vessel, not for perfection, but for liberation. So hold it lightly, live it deeply, and let each moment be a bow to the chance you have right now to wake up. You are the continuation of many choices. There is a moment often unspoken when you realize you didn't arrive here by accident. This breath, this stillness, this willingness to listen, it's the fruit of choices. Some made today, some long ago, some perhaps in lives you don't remember. The Buddha taught that we are the continuation, not of a fixed self, but of actions, of tendencies, of intentions repeated again and again. You are not bound by those choices, but you are shaped by them. Just as a river is shaped by the land it's passed through but not limited to it. It can always shift, always carve new paths. You are like that, a continuation of kindnesses you forgot, of patience you practiced, of fear you faced, and healing you began. And each moment of awareness now is part of that stream. You may feel small tonight, like not much has changed. But even the decision to pause, to listen to, rest in presence, that too continues forward. It becomes tomorrow's breath, tomorrow's mood, tomorrow's ease. In every moment, you're casting seeds. Not always with your hands, but with your mind, your attention, your response to what arises. This is karma, not fate, but formation. Not reward or punishment, but continuation. That means your suffering today is not your fault, but it may be your opportunity to meet it, to soften around it, to shift its energy so that what continues is less tight, less heavy, more free. This is the sacred work of being human. You carry the choices of countless yesterdays, and yet right now, you can choose differently. To let go of a belief, to forgive a moment, to welcome rest. And in doing so, you're not erasing the past. You're reweaving it. You're creating a future that's rooted in gentleness, not fear. Even your most painful habits can be softened. Because habits are not chains. They're patterns, and patterns can change with each small turn toward awareness. The Buddha said, "Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of the mind." So what is the mind inclining toward now? Stillness, kindness, letting go. Each breath carries the imprint of your direction, and this direction is your gift, your power, your way of shaping what continues from here. Not by force, not by control, but by presence. By choosing again and again the response that leads to peace. You are not the past. You are the response to it. You are the possibility it gave birth to. And tonight you are choosing something new. Even now as you lie here, breathing into quiet, you are continuing, not just yourself, but the Dharma. You are continuing peace. And the world is a little softer because of it. What if you didn't grasp the next thought? The mind is always ready, waiting to catch the next thing, the next worry, the next memory, the next idea that says, This matters more than resting. It doesn't mean to disturb. It just doesn't know how to stop. It's been trained after all to grasp, to compare, to rehearse. But tonight, you're going to try something different. Something profoundly simple. When the next thought arises, what if you didn't grasp it? What if you let it appear just as a cloud appears in the sky and float on by no judgment, no story, no effort to push it away, just no grasping? This is what the Buddha taught, that liberation isn't about having no thoughts, it's about not being caught by them, because the mind will think, the breath will move, life will go on. But the suffering begins the moment we believe this thought is mine, this thought is me, this thought must be followed. So ask yourself softly when the next idea rises in your mind, is this necessary? Is this true? Is this worth clinging to? If not, let it pass. Return to the breath. Return to the softness of this body. Return to the feeling of being carried as you are without needing to be anyone else. You might feel resistance. That's okay. Even resistance is just another thought, another story. You don't have to win against it. You don't even have to calm it. You just don't have to believe it. Thoughts are like dreams, real in the moment, but gone when you wake. And what you're practicing now is the art of staying awake. Not with alertness, but with presence. Awake to the moment. Awake to the breath. Awake to the deep peace that comes when you stop chasing the next thing. There is a story in the Buddha's life. A monk asked, "Why do I still suffer, even though I meditate every day?" The Buddha replied, "Because you still grasp." Grasping doesn't mean holding something physically. It means holding it in the mind, in the heart, tight and unrelenting. So let's practice release, not as struggle, as surrender. Let the thought come. Let it go. Let the feeling rise. Let it soften. You don't have to fix anything tonight. You don't have to solve anything. All you have to do is notice what it feels like not to hold on. Maybe it feels like floating. Maybe it feels like falling. Or maybe it feels like stillness, a quiet that isn't empty, but vast. That space is always here. It lives underneath every thought. It welcomes every letting go. And when you rest there, you begin to see you were never the thoughts. You were the sky that held them. You were the space in which they came and went. That's what the Buddha meant when he spoke of emptiness. Not a void, but a fullness that doesn't cling. A peace that doesn't rely on grasping. And that peace is what you're returning to now. So don't chase the next thought. Let it come. Let it pass. And stay with what's here. Soft, present, sufficient. In this stillness, there's nothing missing. Nothing to become. Nothing to defend. Just this breath. Just this moment. And the quiet joy of not needing anything else. The stream that no longer clings. Now we come to a quiet turning. Not the end, but a soft resting point in the long flowing stream of becoming. All this time we've spoken of karma, rebirth, samsara, of grasping and release, of birth and becoming, of the fire that burns and the stillness that cools. But now we pause and ask what happens when the stream no longer clings, when there's no more reaching, no more grasping, no more shaping of self and world. The Buddha said, just as the river flows to the ocean and loses its name, so too does the mind when it is no longer held together by ignorance and craving. It doesn't disappear. It becomes free. When the stream stops clinging, it doesn't stop flowing. It stops suffering. It begins to reflect like a still pool the sky above it. It no longer carries the mud of old habits. It no longer rushes forward chasing things it doesn't need. It simply flows. Clear. Unbound. Content. That's what the Buddha meant by nirvana. Not annihilation, but release. The fire goes out not in despair, but in peace, because there is nothing left to burn. You may wonder, can this really happen to a life like mine? A mind like mine? The answer is yes, but it doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments. Moments like now, when the body is soft, the breath is deep, the heart is open, and the mind remembers that it doesn't have to hold on. Each time you let go, you taste a little bit of freedom. Each time you rest without needing, you step outside the wheel. Each time you trust the present more than the past or future, you unbind one more thread. And slowly, the stream becomes light, not heavy with identity, but spacious with awareness. You don't need to get there tonight. You don't need to rush. The stream doesn't stop all at once. But what matters is you've seen its pattern. You've felt its tug. And now, you know how to meet it with stillness, with patience, with peace. So let the stream flow, but don't fall into it. Be the sky above it, the awareness that sees but doesn't chase. Let karma unwind itself. Let thought pass. Let the body rest without needing to fix a thing. And feel what it's like to not become, to simply be. Because in that being, the deepest transformation happens. The fire cools, the burden drops, the stream returns to its natural rhythm, and you begin to remember your original peace. The Buddha once said, "There is monks, an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed," and that he taught is your true refuge. The place within that was never tangled, never grasping, never afraid. You've touched it tonight, even if briefly, even if gently, and that is enough. That is the taste of freedom. Now, as the breath softens, as the stream grows still, let yourself float gently into this final silence. There's nothing more to understand, nothing more to do, nothing more to become. You are here, you are safe, and you are enough. All the teachings we've walked through karma rebirth, samsara, the letting go of self, they are not burdens. They are blessings, whispers to guide the mind home to what it has always known, that peace does not wait for you. It is you when you stop running. Let that truth cradle you now. No thoughts to chase, no selves to hold, no path to walk tonight except the gentle unfolding of your own breath. If a thought arises, smile softly. Let it pass like wind through leaves. If a memory returns, bow to it. Let it go with kindness. You have walked a long journey in this stillness, and now you rest. As the mind settles, as sleep begins to bloom, may the seeds of peace you've planted tonight carry on in ways you'll never fully see, but always feel. May your dreams be soft. May your breath be steady. May your heart be light. And if you forget everything else, remember this: you don't have to cling to be whole. You don't have to become to be free. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a peaceful night.